You're listening to another episode of Listener Questions live on the Orange and Black Insider Bengals podcast and CincyJungle.com. Welcome to our Friday get-together where we kick off your weekend by answering your questions about the Cincinnati Bengals, their upcoming matchup on Sunday, and all things Bengals. You can get in touch with us via call or text 949-542-6241. Email the obinsider@gmail.com. You can tweet us at BengalsOBI, and we've got 3 live chat feeds going, one on CincyJungle.com on our post, one on Cincy Jungle's Facebook, and another on our YouTube channel. So get those questions to us. We're going to fire through as many as we can and get to them on all kinds of different platforms. I'm Anthony Cosenza, joined by John Sheeran. John, how you doing, bud?
Doing pretty good on this Friday, a Friday filled with potential mystery in terms of the Bengals week 6 matchup, but some of that appears to be cleared up this morning via the Colts owner, eccentric owner Jim Irsay. So I guess we can kick it off with that.
Yes, we will, and I'm sharing an update from the Indianapolis Colts website from Twitter. So I know we're going to be asked a lot about this. Number one, John and I don't work in the league office. We don't work inside the front offices of the Indianapolis Colts, nor do we in the Cincinnati Bengals. We cover the NFL, we cover the Bengals, but we do not have any say or any other inside information on this except for, like John said, Jim Irsay came out and said everything's copacetic for the game to start. There, I guess, were four positive samples that were retested and been confirmed negative after a couple of different sources said so per the Indianapolis Colts. So I know there are a lot of people wondering what's going on with the game Sunday and everything. After this came out, and like John said, after Jim Irsay, Colts owner, came out and said, we're on, Marissa Contepelli of Bengals.com confirmed that. So as of now, we are on, John Sheeran, for Sunday at 1 p.m. Eastern. Things can change, as we know, with the COVID situations and how fluid things can be. But as of now, there are no changes. So if that's where your questions are going to go, we're going to kick it off with that and just let you know that as of now, there are no changes to the games. Right, John?
Absolutely. And real quick, Chad Hellier from Facebook, happy birthday, man.
Yeah, happy birthday. Thanks for joining us on your birthday. I wish we had another gift aside from a podcast episode for you, but hopefully this is our gift to you, our birthday gift to you. Happy birthday. And hopefully the Bengals get you a win this weekend, my friend. That would be good.
So Noel from Logan asks, how much of the run game struggles are on Joe Mixon's quote unquote Le'Veon Bell style of play, i.e. patience, all that stuff, with such a bad line? Mixon should know the holes he's weighed and aren't opening up. So there's some interesting stats regarding Joe Mixon this season. For one, he's actually facing not very many 8-man boxes, which has been a rarity compared to how his career started. And his time behind line of scrimmage is pretty much league average. But unfortunately, there's another metric from Next Gen Stats called efficiency, which measures how much of a north and south runner that you are. And right now, he's one of like the bottom 6 or 7 guys in terms of just getting across line of scrimmage and getting upfield as quick as possible. So, while yes, it's on the run blocking in terms of not getting holes opened up for him in terms of the primary read, he also has to do a better job of getting downhill a little bit quicker. And it's not always just about he does not run the same way that Le'Veon Bell does when he was in his prime at Pittsburgh. It's not the same. There's been a couple examples of that, but it's not necessarily like that. So it is on him to also get into those holes. It's on the offensive line to open them up, but it's not just one has to do better than the other or one is more failing than the other one right now.
The other thing that's interesting about this and why I found this to be such like an intriguing question via text is when Gio Bernard sometimes goes, when we've seen games where Mixon's just not getting it going, the offensive line's not blocking well, and it's a lot of big losses or a lot of 3 yards cloud of dust type of things, type of runs by Mixon, and then Gio gets in there for a spell, and all of a sudden he pops a decent run, and you see Gio be a little bit more decisive initially on where he's going, and I think sometimes fans look at that and you say, well, what's going on, but there are other schemes, and you see late in the season when things start to click that happened in 18 and happened in 19, and maybe it'll happen this year. The schemes change. There are some outside runs that end up for Mixon, and so we'll see what happens there. We're gonna get this call in here. 1 second.
Somebody's fiending to speak.
I know.
send a voicemail.
This is the Orange and Black Insider. Who's this?
Hey, it's Terrell.
Terrell. Wouldn't be Friday without you, my friend. How are you?
Oh yeah, not without y'all either though. But I just want to just say a couple good things though. One thing I gotta say is that linebacker core is a breath of fresh air from last year. And Logan Wilson home better than all three that trash they had last year. But I was just wait till the Ken Gaither and they get their grown man body and get their experience. They're gonna be great. I just want to say Jesse Bates and Tyler Boyd, they better get to the Pro Bowl. They better make it to the top 100 this year. If they don't make it to the top 100, I told my friend, I said, if they don't make it to the top 100 this year, I got a right letter to that. It's a good deal or something. Because I know we the Bengals, that we and then I just got to say that we just got to tighten up, just get more experience that we can. It's some type of way, and we try to get some type of practice squad lineman like Sadiq Charles or something like that to try to maneuver around or something like that, and maybe some tight ends. I feel like some more that can stretch the field. Just maybe next year in the draft. But that's all I gotta say. And cool day, and like I said, just I know it's gonna be long, but it's gonna be a bumpy ride. But I'd say about 6 or 7 wins though.
All right, thanks, Terrell. We'll take some of your comments off the air here. Thanks for calling in as always, bud.
Have a great one.
All right, you too.
Bye.
I mean, we know we've seen the improvement from the linebackers, like Terrell said. So, I mean, we've talked a little bit about that on some of our other shows with Logan Wilson, Akeem Davis-Gaither. Davis-Gaither just seems like he's been so close to making some really impactful plays and just hasn't done it yet. So you hope that turns around for him. Of course, Jesse Bates is playing like one of the best safeties in all of football. So probably if that continues throughout the year, he's going to make the Pro Bowl, John. But what do you make about the scouring of practice squads, etc.?
I think he mentioned Sadiq Charles, who is on the Washington football team, and I think he's going to start for this week for them. So I'm not sure that he's available, but I want to go back to what he said about Bates. I think Bates is making an argument for being one of the most valuable defensive players in the NFL right now. PFF has him with an 89 overall grade. The next closest Bengal is William Jackson with a 69 on the Bengals defense. You think about all the injuries that they've lost on that side of the ball, and they still have an above average defense right now. I think PFF just ranked them in the top 10 for their defense. So Bates has been the main catalyst around that turnaround, and I think that speaks volumes to how well that he's playing and how much value that he's giving that defense. And when it comes down to giving out these awards at the end of the season, you have to think that his name is going to be up there.
Yeah, and the Bengals have as a guy I was intrigued by this offseason. Bengals, in terms of a pass catching tight end, they have a guy on their own practice squad, Mitchell Wilcox, that I wonder if that he gets a shot later in the season. But obviously, with CJ Uzomah going down, they don't have the faith in Wilcox to step right in and make some plays from the tight end position. I do think a pass catching tight end would be nice to have in this offense. I know, the people out there are always talking about your favorite player, Thaddeus Moss, John, floating out there. I don't think he's been picked up. But look, the Bengals need some help. Pass catching tight end would be helpful. Obviously, offensive lineman. But really, are you gonna go out there and get a starting caliber offensive lineman off of someone else's practice squad? Maybe if you find a diamond in the rough. John, I looked this morning. I just was curious based on the Bengals offensive line performance. My mind went to Josh Jones, right? The kid from Houston. And I go, what is he doing? That was a guy that ended up falling. A lot of people wanted him in the second round for the Bengals, maybe even third round. Like, what is he doing for the Cardinals? Well, he started 0 games and played in 2. So, and that's a guy who was, I think, the 75th overall pick in the draft. So I don't know that you can just go on someone else's practice squad and readily find someone that's a plug and play starter.
Yeah, I mean, this is Walmart. You can't just grab guys off the shelf and expect them to start. So, Lindsey Brillhart, no Pro Bowl for 2021. That is true. This isn't going to be a game, but they're still going to be honoring guys with Pro Bowl nominations and stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, we got a call from another longtime listener, John from Kentucky.
Oh, thanks for taking my call. Anthony Cosenza, John Sheeran, just a few of the great
podcasters
Oh, thanks,
for
man.
the Cincinnati Bengals. I always enjoy listening to you guys.
Appreciate
I
that.
have followed the Cincinnati Bengals for the last 40 years. Oh, actually longer than that. In the 70s, I was a little kid. I do remember the first game that comes to memory was with, I think it was Tiger Johnson. I think it was around 1975. And then Homer Rice. And then, but when Forrest Gregg came and the Bengals did make their first Super Bowl, I was kind of hooked ever since. But in this 40-year period, the Bengals have actually had, in my opinion, 4 Super Bowl caliber teams. Of course, with Kenny Anderson, they did go. They made it. With Boomer Esiason, they made it. Now with Carson Palmer, unfortunately, his injury, but that team was Super Bowl caliber, Super Bowl competitive, and, of course, 2015 with Andy Dalton. And I just want to make this point. I don't think I've ever said this, but when Hugh Jackson was here, Andy Dalton, there was a major difference in 2015 than what we normally see. He was not predictable. He would come up to the line of scrimmage slowly, and he's looking all over the place at the defense. Then he gets down to run a play, then he stands up and he runs over to AJ. My point, he keeps audibling and changing plays. The Bengals were 10-3 that season. So unfortunate Dalton broke his thumb. Anyway, to get to today's issues, I think last year we were a little bit too hard on Dalton, even though he's been 10 years. Time for him to go. But people were just like, Dalton, that's all our problem. Well, Burrow is here, and it's very obvious. Dalton was not our only problem. I just hope Joe Burrow is not seriously injured. I'm sure we're all hoping that. And what should the guy do? He's not been here long enough to change up plays in audible just yet. And these players aren't on the same page anyway. To just get the ball and just try to make that quick pass, get it back down like Dalton did so many times, or just throw it away, just whatever, for his own protection. What do you think?
Well, John, thanks for calling in. It's a really good point and a lot of good questions. We'll take them off the air, but it's good to hear from you again. Be sure to call in when we take the air, but take care and enjoy the game this weekend.
Take care.
All right. So, John, look, my thing is, I think with both quarterbacks, I think we know that the potential is sky high with Joe Burrow, and the championship window is open with Joe Burrow on this team. There are a lot of new parts, including Burrow, on this team that complicate the offense. But also, John, this offensive line pigeonholes this team into doing certain things because they can't provide the protection that is needed to really do all the things that Burrow does well. And even though Dalton struggled, it was kind of the same thing towards the later years there. It kind of pigeonholed him with his limited skill set.
It doesn't matter if your quarterback isn't the only problem. If your quarterback is a problem, then that's a problem that needs to be remedied immediately, if not sooner. And that's exactly why they dumped Dalton to the trash and got a franchise caliber quarterback in Joe Burrow. The difference is it wasn't going to change overnight if the offensive line didn't drastically improve. The offensive line is essentially the same as it was last year, only have a better yet rookie left tackle instead of a rotation of John Jerry and Andre Smith. All the other positions, they're basically the same players right now. So nothing's really changed for the better part because there's only so much that one offensive lineman can do to better the entire group. That was the biggest issue going into this team, and it's obviously hindered this team from doing basically anything meaningful this season. It wasn't going to change overnight unless that drastically changes overnight. And even then, you still have a rookie quarterback that more times than not, rookies don't really produce well compared to the rest of the veteran quarterbacks in the NFL. It wasn't just a one-year reclamation project, and it's not something that we can say, hey, maybe we shouldn't have been too hard on Dalton. He wasn't exactly the biggest problem. It doesn't matter if he wasn't the biggest problem. If he is a problem and there's a way to improve upon that, you fix that first. You always do.
Yeah, and I think we talked about this one a little bit, John. Look, I mean, Taylor tries to bring over the system that the Rams run. Well, you know what the Rams have? The Rams have a capable offensive line, including one of the top offensive tackles by Pro Football Focus metrics, Andrew Whitworth. Still Andrew Whitworth, one of the top PFF tackles. So they are able to do a lot of different things in that McVay offense because of a competent offensive line, whereas the Bengals do not have that in pass pro.
Right. Let's get to another question here.
Yep.
This story came from, I believe, Thursday night. This question comes from Mark Fry from YouTube. What is your opinion on Baltimore defense coordinator Don Martindale yelling at Zach Taylor for taking a field goal at the end of last week and avoiding a shutout?
I heard that, and I'm like, really? That's the battle you're going to pick. That's the hill you're going to die on. I understand. And in one sense, if that is your coach, you almost kind of like it because you're so competitive that you want to maintain that shutout and you want to really stick it to a division rival. And I like that. If you are a Ravens fan, I think you probably like a little bit of that, but it just seems so petty. It seems so ridiculous. They already pounded the Bengals all day. They pounded their rookie quarterback all day. I find it to be really trivial, and you're sweating small things that maybe shouldn't be sweated, but that is, if that's even correct English, I don't even know. But that is my that is my take on it.
Like, I don't think either of these coaches are going to remember this in a month. I think it was something that happened in the moment, and it's still kind of fresh in Martindale's memory. Apparently, he just yelled across the field, like calling him out for doing it. And Taylor was, quote unquote, just quiet because he knew what it was. At the end of the day, like, if I'm Zach Taylor, yeah, like, I guess 3 points is better than nothing. But at that point, like, there's no, it doesn't matter. Like, you're already beaten to a death, and the only difference is just 3 points. So I get both sides of it, but at the end of the day, like, it's so inconsequential. It's just not even worth talking about.
Yeah. Let's get to one we had on Twitter. I'm going to share it here. Ryan Kaufman, real brief and to the point, John. Why on earth isn't Ross playing? Well, Ross isn't playing because he has not been doing very well when he has been called upon this year. He has had one of the most enigmatic and frustrating careers to this point as a Cincinnati Bengal. However, John, I noticed a tweet from Lindsey Patterson this morning, Cincinnati media member, that she said something to the effect of, it looks like John Ross is going to get his shot this weekend, whatever that means. But your thoughts on Ross and maybe what this all means for Sunday?
Well, he's probably going to play because Auden Tate's probably not going to play. He's, I think, listed as doubtful with a shoulder injury. It's kept him out of practicing full this week. So, yeah, it's just his time to go up against it. And now you had James Rapine for Sports Illustrated writing something about, it's time to get Ross back involved. Like, I know that there was a reason why he wasn't out on the field. There just was a clear lack of communication with him and Burrow, and it just looked like he just wasn't there mentally. And even if he was fully healthy for one of the first times in his career, like, it just wasn't coming together. And at this point in year 4, you got to have the guys out there that can actually do their job, and especially with the receiving core that's as deep as it is right now, even with AJ Green suffering injuries. So, yeah, like, at this point, with how bland and terrible the offense is, there's no real downside of bringing him back out there and see what it is, especially when you have a guy in Tate who's going to be injured and you need another receiver to step up. I'm not expecting a lot from him at this point because there's just no point. But yeah, there's no harm in seeing what he has for a couple targets this week.
Look, the other point, John, here is this may be still a season where, especially as the losses potentially pile up here in this tough stretch, this may be a season where, again, you look to next year and you say, what do we have for next year? The Bengals have Auden Tate under contract for another year beyond 2020. So he'll be here in 21 by all stretches of the imagination. John Ross is an impending free agent, and at some point they're going to need to see what they have from him, and if he is going to make it with Joe Burrow in this offense under Zach Taylor, and if he can provide any kind of consistency in the deep ball game, he needs to start showing it if he's going to remain in Cincinnati next year. It's looking very unlikely that he will, but it could become kind of a audition type of scenario for some of these teams if this season kind of starts to get out of control in the loss column.
Exactly. Like, he's not just fighting for a contract with Cincinnati, he's fighting for a contract with another team right now.
Right.
So let's go back to Facebook. We had a question from Kyle Gentry at the beginning of the show. What's the deal with Marcus Hunt? There are apparently rumors that the Bengals visited him and are interested in bringing him in. They need bodies at defensive line, but Anthony, a guy who was a part of the Marvin Lewis tenure, like, how would you feel about him coming back?
I mean, it's a body, and it's a guy who I'll say this. I mean, he was more recently productive than he was at the beginning of his career. It's not like a guy necessarily who was, doing this and then they're getting him really on the downside. But the problem is, John, he's older than AJ Green. He's like 30. He's like 33 years old, 34 years old, and even though he kind of ascended with the Colts and nothing ever happened with the Bengals. It's a guy that's still up there in age. How much production is he really going to give you? He's a physical freak, but how much production is he going to give you at this age? And the thing also that really made me surprised about this. That was a Marvin Lewis guy. And really nobody from Marvin Lewis's staff has held over under Zach Taylor. And the fact that they want him back, this smells totally like Mike Brown. So I'm not like against it, but I just don't see a huge upside or a major Band-Aid being placed on the Hubbard injury and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and the team, he was with the Saints for the first 4 weeks of the season. And he just didn't make an impact at all because he's Marcus Hunt. But the team he was with before was the Indianapolis Colts, and he had 2 pretty good years in 2017, 2018. I think both years that he played against the Bengals, and he had pretty good games against them. So maybe it was just a thing where they bring in him for just 1 week and maybe see what the Colts are up to on the defensive side of the ball. But yeah, like even if they need bodies, there's not much that Marcus Hunt can do. And honestly, he turned 33 this year. I would have expected him to turn like 36 because he was legitimately 28 years old, I think, when he first started here.
Yeah, he was old when they drafted him, and that was one of the old by draft standards, I should say. That was one of the knocks then, and he did hit his stride with the Colts, like I said, but I don't know how much more he can bring given his age, and I don't know. I kind of felt like there may be some other options out there, but it's the devil, and that's what they're sticking with. Let's go with an email from Patrick Esther, who is a frequent listener of the program. There's been lots of criticisms of the coaching staff. I can't help to think the team is not going to be able to by the way, this is in the, if the Bengals look for new head coaching people or candidates. There has been lots of criticisms, perhaps some of it unfair, of the coaching staff, but I can't help but think the team is not going to be able to interest most promising candidates. I know you don't like calling for the firing of anybody, but let's assume the Bengals are looking for a new head coach. How do they make the job appealing? Yes, there's Burrow and a collection of promising talent, but the Brown family brings a certain amount of, quote, baggage. Sure, there are only a finite number of NFL coaching jobs, but counting on desperation to overrule common sense seems like a losing strategy. So, again, I don't think that this is going to be a topic of conversation this coming off season, unless this thing completely spirals out of control. But I think they're going to give Zach Taylor another shot under Burrow. What do you think with that? How do you spin this aside from, hey, you got Joe Burrow? I mean, maybe that is enough for a lot of guys, but how else do you spin this job if you're looking for another head coaching candidate or another coordinator or something to that effect?
Well, think about all the things that people don't like about Zach Taylor, right? It's not just him as a play caller or him as a game manager. He has a lot of autonomy with this organization right now. Like, he brought in all of his staff. He has great influence on the personnel that he's brought in. He was given a blank check this offseason to bring in free agents. And right now, people don't like the fact that he's like basically holding on to a family member, Jim Turner, and handicapping what could be a pretty decent offense, if not for a terrible offensive line, and his incapability of evaluating offensive line talent that brings to why the position group is as bad as it is. So if you're the Bengals, you're like, that was something that we kind of knew because Marvin Lewis, garnered so much influence in the decision-making process that he was able to bring in his guys and have so much influence for so long. Like, that was the whole appeal with the Bengals organization, even with all their shortcomings. We're going to give you a lot of control as the head coach because we don't have a true GM, and you're such a crucial factor in the decision-making process. If you fire a guy after 2 years, even though it's the right decision, some of that brand becomes a little damaged because you just gave a guy 16 years and you just gave up on a guy after 2 years. No matter how bad that those 2 years are, it's still a questionable factor when it comes to bringing in another guy. But like you said, I don't think we're going to be talking about this in January. I think he is going to get at least 2 years with the quarterback of the future. But at the end of the day, if you're bringing in a new guy and you have a quarterback as talented as Joe Burrow, along with all these other young talented pieces, despite how bad the rest of the roster is, that's still enticing to say the least.
Absolutely. You got another one in the queue here for us before we get on out of here in a few?
Yeah, we got a comment from Indiana Bengals fan from Cincy Jungle. I actually met the guy a couple of years ago in training camp. He's a nice dude. Yeah.
He comments a lot on Cincy Jungle, so I've seen him a lot for a long time. He's a good commenter.
Yeah, so shout out to Indiana Bengals fan. He was asking, we all know the offensive line needs work. How many free agents and draft picks should we be allotting to fix this upcoming offseason?
That was for the offense or the offensive line?
Offensive line.
Offensive line. I think, quite honestly, and it depends on where you're drafting, where you end up drafting this year. But I think the first 3 picks of this next year's draft in some order should be 2 offensive linemen and probably a wide receiver. I tweeted this out that I think that wide receiver is a bigger need than a lot of people realize. Coming next year, John Ross, impending free agent, AJ Green, impending free agent, Auden Tate, and a free agent after 21, Alex Erickson, a free agent after this year. So there's a lot of vacancies, and Mike Thomas is on a 1-year deal. So there's 4 potential vacancies right there that the Bengals need to fill. And as you've mentioned, John, the wide receiver group this year is showing a total lack of separation. That being said, you absolutely need another high-end tackle, and you need another mauling technician of a guard within those first 3 picks. I think those first 3 picks, those are the 2 or 3 position groups you got to look at.
Yeah, and the original question mentioned that left guard, right tackle will obviously be the positions of focus, because we want to keep Williams at left tackle and we have Hopkins for the next 2 to 3 years. It's going to come down to when and if Xavier Su'a-Filo comes back, how good does he look towards the end of the year? And yeah, with Michael Jordan, he's not exactly playing great in his second year of starting, and there's only so many more weeks that they can just put him out there and expect him to develop. So if both those guys don't look at least promising, at least one of them has to be replaced next season. They signed Su'a-Filo to 3 years. They think that he's going to be a starter for 3 years, but if he can't stay on the field, and when he gets back on the field, if he doesn't look any better than what John Miller looked last year, there's just no reason to not look at upgrading him. And again, I don't think that they can convince themselves to go another year with Bobby Hart, despite him not maybe allowing every sack that the offensive line allows. There's just so much that you can put up with a guy who's as bad as that. So right tackle is going to get replaced. They're going to move on from him in 2021. One of the guard spots is going to get replaced, even if they have both those guys under contract for 2 more years. The whole group needs an appeal, and they already have a guy that they're confident in left tackle and center. So at least 2 of those spots are going to get replaced.
Here's a question that kind of relates to that question. What if the Bengals fall into Penei Sewell, right? The top rated offensive tackle in this year's class. He's opted not to play, which is a little scary, I guess, if you're a team looking to invest in a guy and you haven't seen him play for a year. But I mean, he's an outstanding football player. What do you do if you draft him and you've got Jonah Williams? Do you move Jonah to the right then and you play Penei Sewell, rookie, at left tackle? How do you navigate that, just for the sake of a fun little debate?
Well, I was a proponent of moving Jonah to right this year and try out Fred Johnson left tackle, because left tackles where Fred Johnson looked pretty good in his rookie year, and Jonah Williams hadn't taken a snap in over 600 days. So there wasn't we have to keep him in left tackle because that's where he was 2 years ago. I think at this point you want to see for as long as you can with Jonah Williams at left tackle. I think Sewell is good enough to play on the right side. It doesn't matter that he hasn't played at all at Oregon for as much as I know, but it also comes down to it doesn't matter where the Bengals draft in the first round. They're going to have a chance to draft a good offensive lineman there. But when it comes to this team's track record with drafting offensive linemen, it's almost better if they just happen to fall into getting the best guy like they did in 2019 with Williams. And if they just happen to be bad enough to draft Sewell, I'm not going to complain. But it's almost like that's just even more comforting than being somewhere in the first round and trusting them to take the actual best offensive lineman available, instead of just hoping that they don't take a guy that they might have more confidence in.
Yep. He's John Sheeran. I'm Anthony Cosenza. We're going to be here just a couple more minutes answering your Bengals questions. You can get them to us in a variety of ways. So like I said, we'll be here a couple more minutes and we'll be taking some more. So thank you for your participation in this show and for downloading it. You can get it on any number of audio platforms, as well as on YouTube and the Cincy Jungle Facebook page, in case you are unable to join us live. But please try and join us live going forward, and we'll try and answer your questions on the air. I've got one here, John. It's from our Twitter account, from Coach K All Day 10. How are the offensive play calling duties split? Is it 100% Zach Taylor? How involved is Brian Callahan?
I don't know for sure. I know that Taylor calls the plays and he has communication with Burrow, and also going back to John from Kentucky, Burrow does have control at the line of scrimmage. He is making audibles. Some of his best plays have been changes right before the snap, and he gets his wide receivers in good positions to make plays. So he has control, at least to a certain extent, when there's less than 15 seconds on the play clock to change the play. But I think when it comes to Taylor and Callahan is obviously a heavy influence in the design of the offense, but the play calling duties, I think, all fall on Zach Taylor for as much as we know.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. I think Callahan's a guy that designs a lot of stuff, has a lot of heavy input on the game plan. But when it comes to in the game, I think all plays go through Zach Taylor, and he's the one who calls them. John, what else do you see here that we need to get to?
There was one from his last name was Rivers on Facebook. Travis Rivers. Why haven't we seen what offers we can get for AJ? Well, if we go back to last year at this time, when there were rumors swirling around about the Bengals trading AJ Green, who was also in the final year of whatever contract that he was on, there were rumors that they could have gotten like a first or second round pick, and they still held their ground and said, no, we're not going to do that. We want him here long term. He wants to be here long term. That was when the market was at its best. And that's when he wasn't even playing. Like he had a bad ankle. He wasn't going to play for the entire year for Cincinnati, and teams were still willing to give up, reportedly, a pretty high draft pick. Now, I don't think you could get any higher than like a fourth or a fifth. And at that point, if you're the Bengals, like, I don't think that they would even feel comfortable doing that, because that would just be taking the ultimate L. Like, at this point, it's either he's coming back on like a really cheap deal, or he's probably not going to come back at all, because no matter how well that he finishes the season, I think there's just enough damning evidence on him that like this is not going to be sustainable, and this is kind of where his career is going at this point. And like they can do more to kind of ease his transition into this part of his career. But if you're a team that needs to rebuild at other positions, it's just there's just not a lot of logic in hanging on to a 33-year-old receiver that's clearly lost a step.
Well, the question itself, why haven't we seen what offers we can get for AJ? I mean, number one, the team would not publicly divulge any offers if they didn't take them, really. I mean, it kind of would go through the rumor mill. And number two, it doesn't mean that they haven't fielded offers or listened to teams to see what they would get for an AJ Green. But yeah, I agree to many of your points there, John. Look, this situation also reminds me a lot. There are a lot of times where the Bengals do not want to trade away their guys for high value to really make a statement to the rest of their roster, right? I mean, it was Paul Brown was that way. Mike Brown has shown the same kind of obstinance, and really it's when his hand is super forced and it's a deal you can't refuse, a la the Carson Palmer trade, where players get moved. But I remember a time, John, I believe it was before 2010, maybe before 2009, where I think it was Washington that offered what would have been a first and a third round pick for Ocho Cinco, who at the time was still productive, but starting to kind of go downhill a little bit. They were going to offer a lot. And I think the third could have escalated to another second or first round pick. So the Bengals could have got a lot for Chad Johnson. Granted, the guy did a ton for the franchise, arguably the best wide receiver in franchise history. But, it's on the other hand, it does provide a nice roster windfall for a guy at the end of the year. They said no, they weren't going to let go of Palmer, and now it kind of seems that they weren't going to let go of AJ with potential good deals on the table. Yeah,
like if they were going to do it, they were probably going to do it last year, but they decided to give him one more year, see how he does on the tag. If he plays well, they extend him or they sign him to a new deal to finish his career. At this point, unless things turn around drastically, it just looks like the end. And again, they're not, like you said, they're not the team to do this type of thing unless they get an offer that exceeds their expectations.
Any others you want to get to before we get on out of here? I know we got to some on Twitter, some from the text and call line, and a lot in the chats. But any others that pique your interest before we hop on out of here?
Yeah, on Twitter, Julia Wright asked, "Do you think I'm cute?" Yes, I do.
I didn't see that one, but okay, that's good. Well, that's a good one to end on. It's a good one to end on. Thanks everybody for your questions on Listener Questions Live. We do these almost every Friday of the month, at least 2, if not 3 Fridays of the month. So join us for that. Join us for the pregame show by Narragansett Beer, Sunday, an hour before kickoff, all the way up a few minutes until kickoff. So join us for that. John Sheeran, myself, and Matt Minnick take on that program. We have a post-game show. John, you looked like you had a You were going to say something. No?
No, you're on a roll there.
Oh, okay. Okay. I thought you were going to maybe say, hey, I'm cracking a Gansett or something like that. But it's still a little early on Friday. Early for me, definitely. But anyway, you can join us on the pregame show, join us for the postgame show after the game, or you can get us on the Monday News Jump. And then, of course, the Wednesday Deep Dive show where John and I talk all things Bengals, dive into what happened last week, what's going on for the week ahead, and all of that. So thanks, everybody, for tuning in. John, you're going to hit the links tomorrow, my friend, so have fun there.
Yeah, and just to clarify what Anthony said, it's never too early to crack open a Gansett.
That's true. That's true. And maybe where I'm at, it's still a little early. But you're right. You're right. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in, and we'll see you for the pregame show. We'll see you Sunday as the Bengals take on the Colts, and have a good weekend.